So in honor of Black History Month, it's only right that we do one of the best black heroes ever, Static, aka some of y'all may know him from Static Shock, his early 2000s cartoon on the WB, or some of y'all might know him from his OG comics back in the 90s. But I'm about to tell you the story of Virgil Hawkins and how the police tried to kill off a group of these teenagers but created a bigger issue, as they usually do. This revamp of this comic picks up days after the Big Bang. And I know some of y'all are probably like, bitch, what the fuck is the Big Bang? Well, let me give you a quick little recap. I'm gonna give you the Clip Notes version because the Big Bang is kind of a little deeper than that. But pretty much it was a chemical explosion on the docks of Dakota where a lot of gang warfare would happen and gang violence. And pretty much the police snuck in there, dropped these canisters in this smoke, this chemical smoke, and it created metahumans. And they thought it was gonna take out these gangs, but it didn't. It created a bigger problem. And the victims of this gas, the ones that didn't die, because people did die, they were known as metahumans, or aka bang babies, because they were gangbangers fighting on the docks when the police gassed them. And those who survived, they got superhuman powers. So now that you got a little backstory, it's a little different in this revamped comic, so let's go meet the main character. So it's a couple days after the Big Bang, and Virgil has this buzzing in his head, you know, and Virgil's just your typical teenager. He's a nerd, he likes his friends and stuff like that. He's a good time, he's not into violence, but now he has powers that he can't control, and Virgil practices martial arts, so he's trying to get his feng shui. I don't know if feng shui and martial art goes hand in hand, but let's just say it does. He's trying to get realigned, that's what I'm trying to say. And his powers are out of control because, like as most supernatural shows or superheroes, your powers are attached to your emotions. Your emotions out of whack, your powers are out of whack. And since these powers been thrust upon him, he doesn't know how to control them, and he doesn't like when he's out of control. And Virgil's remembering, this is a flashback, the last time he was at school, the day after the Big Bang, and Francis, aka Hot Street, came back to school. And y'all know Francis was a racist bully who always picked on Virgil, picked a fight because now he has his fire powers. He's like, whoosh. And then, well, he didn't know Virgil had his static powers, his electricity powers. So they get into a fight in the hallways, and Virgil doesn't know if anybody sees them. So Virgil hasn't been back to school since him and Francis got into their superhero fight in the hallways. So he's worried that his powers are exposed and people are going to see him as a freak, because don't nobody like the Bang Babies in Dakota. And Virgil's mad because he's never been a violent type of guy. And he keeps on having flashbacks of how his life was just a month ago and how everything's changed. And life does change fast. So now Virgil's on his way to school. And he hasn't been at school since him and Francis got into that fight. And he's scared that his power's been exposed. So he's dreading going to school today. And his sister Sharon, the one, aka the bad cook, if y'all watched the cartoons back in the day, she's like, you know, hey, she made him like a to-go bag, like a doggy bag. And he pretty much walks right past her. And honey, if somebody goes out their way to make you some food, you don't disrespect them, especially not in a black household, because you could go hungry. And she grabs Virgil because he walks right past her. He like snaps at her and he's like, don't touch me. But I think deep down he was worried that he might electrocute his sister. Then it's like, how do I explain that to my parents? And she's like, I don't give a fuck what's going on with you. She jacks him up like, honey, I'm the big sister, you the little brother. Honey, don't ever come at me with that. All of a sudden, since you got into a fight and you got these powers, you're Mr. On Site now. Because yeah, in this iteration, the family knows about his powers. It's not a secret. Bitch, this is the last time I do something nice for your bitch ass. But he's like, I'm sorry. And then he just goes off to school. Also, can we take a moment to like, look at his hair, like the attention to detail of the hair. And then while Virgil on his way to school, there's like a podcast playing. And this guy who's this podcaster, he's iterating, or he could be live streaming too. He's telling his viewers how the police, we were just like guinea pigs with this gas they were using to break up the protests, because in this iteration, the Bang Babies, the Big Bang happened through a Black Lives Matter protest, which I like how they updated it. Because, you know, Static Shock has always been somewhat political. But this podcaster, live streamer, Twitch dude, he's like, honey, guess we were guinea pigs because they were testing out this gas on us. And for some of us, it made us a lot worse off than we were to begin with. And it's ironic because they gassed kids who were begging to be seen as human, which is why they were at the protest. They watched them die, and even worse, some of them, you know, like mutate. So it's like, where's their morality? Where's the humanity? But y'all created even bigger monsters, because now the people who y'all consider to be bad, y'all gave them power. So now they can actually right the wrongs that y'all are doing. And they just show various Bang Babies with powers and deformities. Okay, so now Virgil's back at school, right? And his anxiety is on 10 because he think after him and Francis, aka Hot Street, got into that fight, that his power's been exposed and everybody's just like gonna think of him as a freak because it's just a couple either days or weeks after the Big Bang, and anybody who has powers or deformities from that Big Bang that happened is looked at as a freak. Oh, it's a high school. There's always going to be whispering in the hallway, especially when the main character walks through. However, he's like, he think they're whispering about him, but really, they're not. He's just playing different scenarios in his head. He's like, honey, I'm Virgil Hawkins. I'm known as the nerd with the smart ass mouth. And then all of a sudden I got these powers and I took out this motherfucking bang baby. And then while he's going through these different scenarios in his head, his friend calls him and she's like, honey, I gotta fill you in on the tea. Have you heard? And he's like, oh shit, here it comes. And she's like, honey, where the fuck was you the other day? Because, honey, a big ass fight broke out and you missed it. And he's like, I missed it. And he's thinking in his head, honey, I was a part of it. But she's like, let me fill you in. And she's like, honey, Francis is a bang baby and he got these like fire powers at the protest, because remember in this version the Big Bang happened at a Black Lives Matter protest because they're trying to update it for the times. And she was like, anyways, Francis was going buck wild with his fire powers in the school, trying to act like the baddest bitch on the block, and then some motherfucker with some static powers came in and started him, honey, put a shock to his system. And Virgil is flabbergasted because he's like, who put a shock to his system? Because, honey, it was me and him fighting. He's saying this in his head because he still wants his cover to be low key. And then she's like, honey, Derek was the one fought him and got the electric powers. And Derek, you see him over there, he's just eating it up. When really deep down, it was Virgil who fought him. But Derek wants to take the credit, you know, because he wants to be a hero now all of a sudden. You know, one of those things, one of those niggas that just like to take credit for shit he didn't do. But Virgil's like, this is cool because then my secret identity is still on the low and I can still live a normal life. And then Virgil's like, honey, I guess it was good with my quick thinking when me and Francis was fighting that I took out those cameras. And then the girl Caroline is like, of course the star athlete would get all these cool ass powers. And he's like, Virgil's like, yeah, right, Derek. Then he hears his name being called, and it's Frida and Richie, like, Virgil, you are finally back. You've missed so much. And then Caroline is like, okay, bye, you guys. However, Virgil has a flashback. He has a flashback because he knows Frida and Richie were there when he attacked, and he couldn't control his powers on Francis. And he's like, they saw me as a monster. And then Frida Gorgon and Richie Foley is coming down the hallway, and Static knows that they know that he has powers since the last time he was at school. He got into a fight, as I told y'all in the first 3 parts. Check up on those if y'all don't know what I'm talking about right now. And he has a flashback of how monstrous he got when he was fighting Hot Streak, aka Francis, the school bully, in the hallways. But he's glad that nobody knows it's really him, because remember, the basketball star is taking a rap like, oh, I beat Francis' ass, when really it was the nerd Virgil. So when they're talking, Richie and Frida are like, we let the rumor of the basketball star having the powers go with it, so it would keep a low cover on you. And Frida's like, you know, you scared us. What happened? And that's Virgil's main fear, because he's like, I would never hurt you guys. But seeing how out of control he got, that's what scared them all, because, you know, when you have something thrust upon you, you don't know how to control it, anything can happen. And in the comics, it usually does. And after he told Frida and Richie that, oh, he would never hurt them, Richie's like, hold on, V. We were scared for you because you almost creased him, aka killed him. And honey, that's going to carry a lot more than just an expulsion from school. And then Virgil's just really not trying to hear it because he has enough on his mind. He's like, you know, it's not going to get me in any trouble. People think Derek did it, the football star. So he was like, I'm clean, I'm cool, I'm in the easy breeze. I don't know what the fuck I just said. And then here's Frida like, oh, Virgil, I know you're going through a lot. Don't forget, I was at the protest too when we were gassed by the police. And don't you hate when you're going through something and somebody's always trying to one-up you with their trauma? It's like, let me have my moment. And when Frida's like, oh, I was there too, Virgil, he's looking at her in his head like, but you weren't there when the police started gassing the protesters who were fighting for human rights. Honey, you were there for the beginning, but you weren't there when shit got real. And he's just remembering in this picture how when he got gassed, how the gas was like burning his lungs and his eyes, and everything in him felt like it was melting, and it was like electrocuted. Bitch, words come back to me. Richie and Frida are pretty much worried for him because like they think his powers are dangerous, and he's like, you know what? I know that. I have to live with them. I got this. I'm gonna see y'all soon. I'll see y'all Saturday when we're going to see some video game. Y'all know how Virgil was a nerd. So that night at dinner, Virgil and his family are sitting down to discuss his powers and the weight that puts on the family now. So as you see, they're all sitting around the dinner table, and you know, Virgil hates because everybody's treating him like he's fragile and he's gonna break because he got these powers now. But also, as you see, we have Sharon, his sister, his dad, and then Virgil over there. But the mom is alive in this iteration, which which I love because it's going to add a new little dynamic. But it's a very tense scene because they're all like wondering like, okay, so what's the next step for our family? Because these powers have definitely threw a plot twist. And his dad is suggesting maybe we should start back up with your martial arts, you know, to keep you balanced and aligned. But Virgil's like, I got school. And I'm looking at Virgil like, you've been complaining this whole issue about your power, sir. And now when you have a way to get your shit back in focus and aligning your feng shui in order, you're like, I got school? After you just got into a fighting school and you just made it out by the skin of your teeth because they don't think it's you. They think it's the basketball star, Derek. And Virgil's just sitting there and he's like, you want me to do my martial arts, you know, and I thought grades were important, you know, you pushed me to get the best grades in school. And he was like, oh, was that all a lie? And then the mother's logically like, honey, it's barely been a week. He's still traumatized after everything that happened. Maybe we should seek out counseling for him instead of trying to get him into martial arts, which, you know, is him fighting when he just needs to relax and get his mind back together. And Sharon's like, honey, to be honest, what he needs is to be left alone for him to deal with his own emotions. Because don't nobody know how he feels better than himself. However, when Static starts to get stressed out in this series, he starts to hear like an electric buzzing. You know when you have like a live wire and you hear that buzzing? Static starts to hear that in his ear when there's arguing or when there's chaos around him, and he starts to get stressed out. And then his powers tend to activate. And Static starts to feel like this crackling underneath his skin, like he's about to explode because his emotions and his anxiety is getting the best of him as his family are debating what he needs to do for his life right now. And then Sharon's debating with her dad. She's like, you're smothering him. He's 16 years old with the weight of the world on his shoulders. He knows how to talk if he wants to. Let him speak for himself instead of everybody doing it for him. And Sharon's like, if y'all know so much, why don't y'all ask him what he needs? And the mother's like, the sass aside, young lady, you're kind of right. And you know, dads hate when the kids are right because then it's always the kids talking back. And long story short, he finally gets it through his head. And the mom's like, honey, what do you need, dear? And Virgil's like, what I need is for my anxiety and these emotions and the buzzing in my head to stop. And he explodes into an electric ball. And you see he turns into like this electric glowing orb. And he's like, I need things to go back to when all I worried about was passing a test. So now Virgil's powers are going crazy. They're out of control because the anxiety of his family telling him what they think he should do instead of asking him, Virgil, what do you think you should do? So as Virgil's like, you know, I need to stop being so out of control. He just wants normalcy again. He gets called the fuck out. And you know when people be like, oh, I bet you won't pull up though. Even though I can't stand Francis. He said, bitch, I'm pulling up to your fucking front door. Francis pulls up to the Hawkins residence. The block is hot. Hands and head on blazing. And you know, Virgil, that's why I say never underestimate a nerd. He may be a nerd, but he's also about that life. He's like, oh, you ain't gonna punk me. But you know how black people are. They kind of shocked, like, this white boy then pulled up at your house. Like, and remember, because Francis is on, bitch, I want some revenge because you whooped my ass at school. He's like, bitch, round 2. What's up? You said on site? Bitch, I'm on site. And see, Virgil's trying to get him away from his family so there's no casualties. But Francis is like, bitch, it's on site. I'm at your door. And Virgil's like, how about we talk this out? But there ain't no talking when somebody pull up on. And he gives Virgil some of them ooh-wop-de-woos and blasts his ass. And Francis is like, oh, what's the matter? Because when you was whooping my ass in school that day when you fought, you was all big and bad. And Virgil's like, you know what, bitch? You brought it to my family house. Bitch, I warned you. I'm about to let loose on your Cajun sprinkle head ass. And Virgil just starts throwing hands. He gives him one of them supersonic, hypnotic, funky, fresh hits. But Francis dodges it. He's like, pretty lame, Bird. And then Francis Hot Streak tries to throw a fireball at him. But this is where Virgil's martial arts skills come in. And he hits him with like a Sierra backbend. And then Virgil hits him with a death drop, aka a drop kick. Look how cool Virgil looks. I love these versions of the villains in here. Part 8 in the comments, or whatever part. So after Virgil gave him that death drop to the neck and made him swallow his pride, Francis is like, oh, bitch, you're gonna regret that. And see, these blue boxes is Virgil talking in his head, and he's like, oh, I'm finna be sore in the morning because I haven't done this martial arts shit in a long time. And remember, a couple parts ago, his father was like, should we get martial arts started again? Sometimes parents do know that. After getting that death drop kick to the neck, Hot Streak, aka Francis, blasts that hoe back. He's like, hold up, bitch, get back, you don't know me like that. But he did. And while Virgil's getting thrown backwards from the fire blast, he remembers in a science class, Dr. McCat was talking about chemical fires. And see, this is where Virgil's being a nerd and like in science and comic books and video games and all the stuff that's deemed nerdy, but fuck labels. So he begins to bring his smarts to the street fight that he's in, street smarts. And he's like, okay, so how can I combat this fire with my static? And he remembers all the sciencey shit about static electricity and then fire. As y'all can clearly see, chemistry, science, none of that was my strong suit. So in his flashback, he remembers his teacher telling him, you know, the electricity inside the containment field is powerful. It ionizes the oxygen and smothers the fire. And see, the field Virgil can create with his electricity is something that can keep the ozone gas it created until it can dispose of it properly. And Virgil's about to take out the trash with Francis. He's like, honey, check please. And see, I love this drawing of Virgil down here. It kind of gives me like, I don't know, it gives me like Avatar. Like, I just love the way he looks. Like, so super powerful, but like urban. Oh, I don't like the word urban, because that's what white people tend to say when they don't want to say ghetto. So scratch that last part. So he knows his electricity power can create a containment force to smother the fire that is Francis. And he's like, enough. And he blasts that bitch. And Francis is like, oh, bitch, I know what you're trying to do, because I may have been in and out of class getting kicked out, but I pay attention sometimes, too. So he summons all his fire, and he's blasting it forward, too. All the energy just meets in the middle, and kaboom. And all those hoes, both sides go flying backwards. Like, honey, I would have such gravel burn. But what Virgil realized as he's fighting Francis is the hotter he gets, because his powers are controlled by his emotion too, the hotter he gets, the smaller his range to throw fire gets. So that's his Achilles heel. Yes, bitch, I know Greek mythology. And he knows that Francis has to build up the heat. But when you got a nigga with short temper and firepower, honey, patience is not in his virtue. And Virgil's like, ho, stay the fuck down before I have to finish your bitch ass. If he can just exhaust Francis, he won't be able to have enough time to build up another fire. And then, like, why does Francis low-key look good? But, you know, we fighting to the end, so, Francis is still trying to fight, and Virgil's like, okay. Part 9 of the Static Shock, are you done? And Hushri's like, no, bitch, I'm gonna destroy you. And Virgil's like, bitch, don't bring your mess around here again, ho. But see, the fire with his electricity, it created, like, ozone gas, which is poison, so he's telling his family, back the fuck up. And I think of a little bit, like, hit his sister, but he protected her in enough time. But see, he's busy checking on his sister. You never turn your back when you're fighting. Rule number 1. And Hashri gets his biggest fireball and hurls it, but not at him or his family. It hits Virgil's house. Cause bitch, if I can't destroy you, cause Francis, you ain't gonna whoop Virgil's ass, I gotta destroy what you love. And you know what they say, home is where the heart is. So now he's destroying Virgil's heart. Now that I've done the iconic static for Black History Month, make sure y'all go support Milestone Media and support Static Shock's comic, because the more y'all support, the more we'll get more comics of him.